California water delivery systems. Last week we talked about the state water project. That's the one that comes down here. And what else did we talk about? Central Valley, right? The one that's mostly for agriculture. So today we are going to talk about the Colorado delivery system. So it's all the aqueducts and what it looks like to get water from the Colorado, which is kind of interesting because we can claim that water, but it's just our border. It's not really our water. Guess whose water it is? It's more like Colorado's water. But it just happens to flow by, and we grab a bunch of it. And we're going to talk about how we do that. And then the LA Aqueduct. So the aqueduct that comes out of the Owens River and feeds over Owens River Valley and feeds the LA area. Okay. So these are some of the major systems, just to review really quickly. We got the Central Valley project we talked about, starting all the way up here at the Feather River. Shasta comes through the Sacramento River. Right at the delta, it gets turned and sent over here to Hesperia, Silverwood Lake, and then through pipelines and everything goes down into Southern California here. Then we got the Central Valley project, very similar kind of trajectory. That's this one here, but it feeds all agriculture. I think it said, what did it say? 20% was something like that was people, urban, and 80% agriculture, whereas state water projects about 20% agriculture, 80% people, right? And then what we're going to be talking about today is the Colorado River, and then the Colorado River Aqueduct coming across here. This is the one that comes very close to Palm Springs. Actually goes through the San Jacinto Mountains, tunnels through the San Jacinto Mountains. If you've ever been to Palm Springs and you've seen that gondola system that goes up to the top. Anybody ever gone up on that? If you haven't, you should do it. Awesome. Well, there's a dang tunnel that goes right underneath those mountains for like 4 miles, right through those mountains, and comes out at San Jacinto on the other side, Hemet, San Jacinto. And that feeds mostly San Diego and also back up into LA. And then down south here, all the way down here, all along the 8 kind of area, down here is the All-American Canal, and that feeds the Imperial and Coachella valleys down here, which are huge agriculture. As far as agriculture going, some of you in our agriculture classes, so let's just talk about that. The San Joaquin Valley, just over the hill here in Bakersfield to Redding, largest agricultural area in the world by far. Second largest one, or very large, I don't know if they're second largest, is this area down here. This is where all our vegetables get produced. So any of you ever notice coming up the pass, be driving up and all of a sudden you smell garlic? Did that ever happen to you? Yeah. And you look like, there's a dang truck of garlic in front of me. What the heck? Then you drive a little further and there's tomatoes. 2 piles of trucks of tomatoes. Well, what the heck is going on here? Well, what's happening is the big processing plants are in the San Joaquin Valley, and they're taking those to make ketchup or whatever they do with garlic. Onions is another one. You can smell onions on the pass. A couple of years ago, we had an onion truck crash, and there was onions all over the 15 freeway, right? You guys remember that? But it's this amazing system, and that only happens if we've got water down in here. This is real desert down here. This is 15, San Joaquin Valley is about 15 inches, semi-desert, kind of like us. This is 2, 3, 4, 5 inches of rain. It's really dry, right? Down Salton Sea's right there. We're going to talk about that a little bit. All right, okay? And then the last one is the California Aqueduct. So if you take LA, which is right in here, and the Los Angeles Aqueduct, see this coming up in here? Comes down the Owens River Valley, right? The east side of the Sierras. One of the most beautiful places in the world. If you haven't taken the time to go up 395 and go off towards Mount Whitney Portal and those places, or go up into some of those little towns, you should really do that. Incredible. And then up here is Mono Lake, which is really interesting. Because Mono Lake is one of the considered across the world, by the way, one of the natural wonders of the world, because it's this incredibly pristine lake that they took a lot of water from, and it was in danger of being going into complete disrepair, and the whole habitats were going to crash, and there was a huge lawsuit, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, book does a good job, especially the new book of talking about that. 37% of Southern California is urban water. Okay, so Colorado water, we're on to Colorado now. It's a pretty big amount of our water for Southern California. Okay, and 92% of these southern counties farm water. Okay, so again, that agriculture we're talking about, that food. In our other classes, Sustainable Ag 175, we talk about this interplay. Who gets the water? And in the end, that means also, are we going to use it for people? Or are we going to use it for food? Are we going to use it for wildlife? And that big interplay needs to happen. And already we're seeing in this area some real issues with that, because these folks are selling their water. Okay, but we also have to share it with 6 other states. 6 other very dry states, right? Nevada, all those beautiful waterfalls you see in Vegas, that's where the water's coming from. They pull that from Colorado, right? And then Arizona, all of those. And there's an agreement where we all get allotted a certain amount of water. We get allotted, California gets allotted 4.4 million acre feet, right? 425,000 gallons in an acre foot. Football field, 1 foot deep, that's the volume. But this is 44 million acres. For many years, we were using 5.4. We were using over. And then I think the slides will go into it. They dropped the boom. The Department of Interior that controls that said no more. You'll cut back to 4.4. That was about 5 years ago. I think it was in about 2010 that they decided, no, you can't do that anymore. Mexico was complaining because they weren't getting their allotment of water. The top end of the oh my gosh, top end of the Baja, the Sea of Cortez. Thank you, Mike. The delta for the Sea of Cortez was basically dying because all the water was being taken before it even got to Mexico. And you'd have to think they have some legitimate rights to that. Okay, so Colorado, we start talking about who are the big players. Well, the big irrigation districts are the big players. Palo Verde and Imperial and Coachella Valley. These are all the big irrigation districts. So what happened when they made these projects, these aqueducts, the farmers came together in these cooperatives called irrigation districts. And they basically control the water. They control the water rights. So if we're going to cut back, if we're going to ask to sell water, here we're talking about is 1/4 of the water rights for the Colorado system, the All-American Canals, held by MWD. So we want to write this down. There's a couple of acronyms that'll come up a lot. One is MWA, that stands for Water Agency. This is Metropolitan Water District. They serve a number of functions. They are also a contract with the State Water Project. They also contract with Colorado River Project, but they also provide water. They're an actual water purveyor. If you live in LA, you actually buy your water from Metropolitan. Mojave Water Agency isn't a water purveyor. You never buy the water from from them. You buy your water from a secondary purveyor. Yes. Yeah.
Mojave Water Agency is just a wholesaler.
No, that's interesting. They're not even a wholesaler. They're not involved in the marketing of the water. They're involved in the management of the watershed and the basin. They actually don't control any of the financial side of it. Their water master, a part of it, controls the part that's to do with the adjudication, but they don't actually. Wholesale in the classic thing makes you think like they buy a whole bunch of water like you would buy a whole bunch of knickknacks and then you sell it to Walmart and Target and all that. No, they're not actually a water wholesaler. I wouldn't use that term. They're called a contractor to the State Water Project, which is itself confusing because they're not They're not selling or buying anything. They manage any water that we all get together and decide to buy from the state water project. They manage that, but you don't buy it from them, okay, to the end customer. Okay. Yeah, it's a good. That's actually interesting. You know, it depends how you define wholesaler, because that's a long conversation. But you could maybe say that. Yeah.
At the water summit, the
Yeah.
gentleman that did
Yeah.
the presentation from
Yeah.
MWFA,
He said that.
he did say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, you look at what they say about MWD. They're Metropolitan. They're considered a wholesaler as well. Yeah. Let me get back to you on that, Chris. That I don't want to misinform you, but I guess you could call them a wholesaler.
But it may not take on normal sense of the word.
You're right. It's not like you'd expect wholesale for regular goods. Yeah. I do know that. Okay. So anyway, Colorado River goes to 14 cities, 12 municipal water districts, 1 county water authority. A lot of people involved in managing this Colorado River water, right? That's what that's trying to tell you. The Colorado is mostly, in terms of urban water, it's through MWD. That's 60% of the water supply. And MWD also draws water from the Colorado River, from the State Water Project, okay? The Colorado River Aqueduct, the one that goes under the San Jacinto Mountain, is 242 miles across the Mojave Desert, okay? So it's a significant project, right? The other one, State Water Project, is about 400 miles, okay? So it's a big piece of infrastructure. It comes out of Lake Mead behind Hoover Dam, and so that's your primary storage for Colorado River water in terms of what comes to California. Okay, there's multiple big dams on the Colorado. As you know, the biggest one being Lake Powell, which is further up. If you've ever flown over that way, you just look over this lake and it goes on forever, even in a plane. Okay. The Colorado River Aqueduct begins at Parker Dam. Okay, so Lake Mead is the major storage. The Colorado River Aqueduct actually starts at Parker Dam, which is down at just above Needles, and then also here we're talking about a little bit about MWD and the last storage dam that was produced, which is the Diamond Valley Reservoir. So as that aqueduct comes across the desert, goes under the mountains, it gets stored in the Diamond Valley Reservoir at Hemet. That one was completed in 1999, and lots of people believe that will be the last big dam that's built in California. The environmental pressure against building big dams and flooding beautiful landscapes and habitats is very strong. But what it did do was alleviate certain concerns. One was water supply in general. Another one would be we needed local water storage here in Southern California in case there was an earthquake. So why are we concerned about earthquakes? You know, what are earthquakes going to do to the supply? And we're talking now specifically about Southern California, all our neighbors to the south.
Cut off flooding.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine the San Andreas, right? Runs right over the aqueduct, right about out there at Lancaster, goes right through it. Well, guess what? That water is just going to flow out in the desert. Sorry, guys, and it's going to take more than a couple of days to patch that thing, to get it back together. Same thing with these Colorado River aqueducts. Any major earthquake would break those open. So we've got to have local storage supply in Southern California to take care of the people in the meantime. See what I'm saying? And that's what one of the purpose of Diamond Valley Reservoir was, okay? And of course, like we said, it's also optional water, extra water during droughts, okay? It's over-allocated, just like we talked about the State Water Project. Remember, we decided in the book was telling us last week that state water project is 5 times over allocated. We talked about that. And also one of the reasons it was over allocated is we now have to fulfill this commitment of 1.5 million acre feet has to reach the Mexican border. There were times apparently that down there at Blythe that the Colorado River was actually running dry. There was nothing going to Mexico. This treaty was just actually not ratified but enforced 2 years ago. That we have to let at least 1.5 million acre feet. And that's a lot of water. Yes, Chris.
Is that controlled by some agency or?
It was an actual treaty between the two countries, and the agent. Yeah, exactly. The agency is the federal government, Bureau of the Interior. Yeah. What is it? Interior Department. Not Bureau of Interior Department. So anyway, up until that, there was nothing reaching the Gulf of Mexico. And that estuary at the top of the Gulf of Mexico, Sea of Cortez, another incredible place, was basically drying up. Since then, they've seen some good recovery. There's your treaty right there, Chris. Over Minute 319 was signed on November 20th, 2012, okay, 5 years ago, to modify the 1944 treaty. And that's when they allocated that 1.5 million acre feet. I don't think they allocated, but they made sure that that was enforced, okay? And I can't remember what the 1%'s about, but that'll be in your book. This is just a quick little summary. Pulls water out of Colorado River, starts at Lake Havasu. That's the Parker Dam. Another William Mulholland project. We're going to talk about William Mulholland, the engineer from LA that did the LA Aqueduct. Kind of an infamous guy. This is just a summary. Okay, here's an interesting little piece, is the Salton Sea. The Salton Sea was an ancient sea, had basically dried up, and over various flooding periods, it had broken loose and filled up over history. But in 1905, just to have a little, yeah, excuse me. But in 1905, oh man, I'm really confused. Bear with me. 1905, the river broke through several dikes and flooded that basin and formed what we now think of Salton Sea. So Salton Sea again is this very environmentally sensitive area. Thousands of birds winter there. I'll show you the pictures that I took there myself of the snow geese, just the sky white with snow geese, just absolutely gorgeous. And there's this huge movement to save the Salton Sea. Salton Sea's got two issues. One, it's basically drying up, and as it dries up, the second problem is it just gets saltier and saltier. So I think we're at like 3 times the saltiness of the ocean right now. And they had a great fish population there, and those are starting to die off. And we talked about them dying off with oxygen deficiency. A couple of the lectures before, did we talk about in this class? Was that the other? Yeah. And so anyway, so the Salton Sea is a very critical thing. That's a great student project to look at the Salton Sea. What are they doing to try to save it? Bit of a problem right now. It was kind of equalizing a little bit when they had maximum agriculture, because the runoff from the agriculture was helping get fresh water back in the Salton Sea. Well, now they're selling a lot of that water to San Diego. The irrigation districts are selling that to San Diego and to Metropolitan for urban use. And so they don't have that pushback. So one of the ideas is to build a dike right down the middle of it and let one side go dry and have the other side more pristine and try to keep it watered properly and all of that. Another one is to actually literally take water and evaporate it and try to take the salts out physically. All kinds of restoration ideas to keep the Salton Sea going. Other problem, biggest problem probably, is that Salton Sea sits here, prevailing winds go right to Palm Springs. And if you let those dry up, those salts that are left aren't just regular salts, some of them are toxic. And that'll all blow onto Palm Springs. And so Palm Springs and actually as far as Riverside, they say. And then we'll have another lawsuit similar to the one we'll talk about in a moment that happened in the Owens River Valley. When they dried up the Owens Lake, that the people of Owens Valley, Bishop, and Big Pine and all those places sued LA Department of Water and Power, LA basically, and they won a huge lawsuit for air pollution. And so LA has been forced to restore the Owens River. They're predicting that if we don't do something about Salton Sea, that's where this will end up. Okay, so California, again, there's a little bit of repetition here. We can only use 44 million acre feet of the Colorado. Colorado is one of the most controversial and heavily regulated rivers in the world. That's its basic information. 1450 miles long, and those are the states that it serves: Mexico, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Arizona, California, and Nevada. And not only does it serve those, it's critical. For those states, places like Utah, not so much Utah, but Nevada, it's most of their water comes from the Colorado. So it's critical to them. We've got other sources. We've got this wonderful Sierras that stores 50% of our water. And so we get our own water on this end. We have our own water supply in a way. It's complicated, but we at least have one. Okay, so we'll keep going. There's some of the pictures that I took. I'm fascinated by the Salton Sea. You can see these trees dying up. Here, if you look carefully, is it this one? No, it's one of my other, it might be in the other. But these are the snow geese. But I don't know if, it's in my other slides. I have a slide over the dead fish. If you go anywhere in the Salton Sea, you'll just see beaches full of dead fish. What happens is it gets hot enough, there's enough nutrients, and basically the algae take up all the dissolved oxygen in the water, and then the fish die. That's how fish die off happens. Okay, there's the Coachella thing. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I see there's some repetition here. Okay, LA Aqueduct, completed in 1913, first major project in California. Was sneaky. The controversy comes right here. The city, without telling anyone, went up to and William Mulholland was the leader of this, the engineer from LA. Yeah, exactly, Mulholland Drive, exactly. And so they went up and they bought up 98% of the land in the Owens River. It was just a bunch of hicks and farmers and folks out there. They bought up all their land to get the water rights. Once they had 98% of it, so that's a lot. If you look at a map of the Owens River, if you go from basically just up here, oh man, my mind is just not there today, but bottom end of the Owens River all the way up to Bishop, 98% of it is owned by LA Department of Water and Power is who's on the deeds. And so they bought that all up, now they had all the water rights, and they built the Colorado River Aqueduct, and they started shipping all that water to LA, and they basically destroyed the local economy and the farming, and in the end drained their lake and caused health issues. So there were a lot of, to put unwilling rural landowners, would put it mildly, at one point a whole group of them got together and blew up the aqueduct. This was years ago, and it's been crazy ever since. There's been a lot of resistance, a lot of pushback. Okay, it was extended, the aqueduct is extended to the Mono Basin. So if you're familiar with that area, you go up 395, you get to Bishop, then you go up that hugely long grade as you go up to where Mono Lake is and you're going on to Mammoth, you get up on a plateau. Well, Mono Lake's up there. So they extended the aqueduct up to there and they started pulling from that Mono Lake watershed as well. And that's where I mentioned that Mono Lake is this pristine, gorgeous place. It's also pretty salty, but it has this lovely ecosystem of brine shrimp that feed all these birds. This is actually the site where the brown pelican actually recovered. You know the story of brown pelicans? They are endangered species that recovered because they banned the use of DDT. DDT caused their eggs to be brittle. The brown pelicans, as well as the American eagles, what do you call it? Bald eagles. We call the exact same eagle in South Africa is called a fish eagle. So I get my terms mixed up. But and they were dying as well. But the main breeding site for brown pelicans is at Mono Lake, and they have recovered brilliantly. In fact, they're ready to come off. If they aren't off the endangered species list, I think they're ready to be delisted and it happened here. So to say that this was an important environmental area of concern would be an understatement. So this is kind of the amount they ship. Again, we're not that interested in actual figures, but 400,000 acre feet gets shipped to LA every year. Serves 3.2 million people. How many people in city? This is city of LA, right? Don't think of the county, but city of LA. How many people? I think are we about 5 million in LA? In the city, just yeah. I think we're getting closer to 5, but it serves most of them. This is a big deal from it. There it tells you. Last stage probably has grown to 4 million. Okay, so all right. And here's the key, right? Without this water, that's at least 8 times greater than what LA could have sustained, people-wise, based on their water. Otherwise, they would basically be pulling for all the way out here the Santa Ana River, right? And from their groundwater. It's a again, they're a semi-desert. It doesn't look like it when you drive down there, but it is a semi-desert. And so this LA aqueduct system is critical. So that's how Mulholland, they're very aggressive in terms of building their city. Whoever brings the water brings the people. He was the engineer who oversaw the early design. 4 decades of stream diversion from Mono Lake damaged the lake, dewatering of its tributary streams, fostered one of the largest environmental battles ever, actually. PG&E, the one we'll visit on our field trip, is considered the biggest one in terms of pollution. This is considered one of the biggest ones in terms of just straight up environmental issues. And these lake defenders and the Mono Lake defenders, they eventually prevailed, okay? And at the same time, so we have the Mono Lake up there, and we have this dry Owens Lake down near Big Pine, further down the valley. At the same time, they're getting sued by another group of people about these dust issues, okay? And so a huge settlement was made, and today, I hope we get back to it, but in the good old days, we've taken field trips up there. We've taken 2-day field trips up there, and LA Department of Water and Power is doing huge restoration projects. They're working with the brown trout in the river. They're re-watering that dry lake. They're putting water back in there. They're growing grasses out on the dry lake to mitigate the dust. They're re-watering Mono Lake. They cannot allow it to drop below a certain critical level, otherwise it triggers huge fines to LA again. They're working we actually grew native plants for them here years and years ago so that they could replant some of the areas, okay? And so there's a huge environmental restoration. It's called ecological restoration going. One of the biggest in the world happening in the Owens Valley, and it's because the people sued Day one, LADWP has to mitigate. They have to fix. So, and here's LA also was forced to do what we do, much better up here actually. Do all water conservation. So that's landscape kinds of things like irrigation, drip systems, toilet replacements. And this is kind of cool. We've done better than this, but you know, LA grew 30% during the final decades of the 20th century, yet saw a decrease of 7% in total water use. And the 15% per capita. The per person in the last couple of decades of the 20th century, so 1980s, 1990s, they saw a 15% drop in what each person uses. We have figures that show that the people of Victorville basically halved their use, 50% in about a 10-year period. So when Nick Schneider comes, 2 weeks' time, he's coming to do a water conservation lecture, what we do locally on these kind of programs. Ask him, what in the last 20 years, what's our percentage across all our communities here per person? How much better are we at conserving water? And I think it's close to 50%. These people they're slackers. Okay, La Aqueduct. So they've done the same thing. This was related to when the governor said, "Hey guys, we're in this terrible drought, one of the second worst ever. Got to do a 20% cut by the year 2017, 50% by 2024." Up here locally, we have all those same targets. They're just even more aggressive than this. Oh, and then of course, this is critical because we'll be talking about this. More conservation, cleaning local groundwater. This is a really big thing. A lot of the groundwater down below has become polluted with all sorts of different industrial toxins. We don't have a lot of that up here. Most of our groundwater is really pristine. The only problem we have locally is, I think we might have talked about it already, but we have certain wells out in the Baldy Mesa area specifically have high arsenic. Arsenic is a pollutant. Arsenic comes from the bedrock. If you have to dig really deep wells of the groundwater, you get arsenic. So I was just speaking to one of the engineers a few days ago actually, and they're actually blending wells. So they'll take water from a well in Baldy Mesa and blend it with ones that are further over to the west, to get the level of arsenic down below the EPA minimum contaminant level. This is another acronym that you guys need to write down, MCL. So today we've had MWA, MWD, now we've got MCL. MCL just stands for minimum contaminant level. MCL. Contaminant level. Yeah, and so if we pick any pollutant, let's just talk about arsenic. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, does research, looks at. Often it goes back to looking at the medical research on whatever the issues are with that particular contaminant in human health, and they set the baseline. So for example, and they're very, very aggressive, these minimum contaminants. So I'll just give you an example. Arsenic about 10 years ago was 50 parts per billion. Very small amount, but it was 50. Then it's gonna be maybe 5 years ago, they dropped that 5 times. It's now 10. So now it's 10 parts per billion. And if you go above that and you're a water purveyor in California, or actually in the country, you get fined, heavily fined. And so you have to keep it below that 10 parts per billion. And so City of Victorville that owns those wells in Baldy Mesa, they're treating it. They're taking the arsenic out through a treatment process, and the guy said we should come over and visit that sometime, and I'd love to do that with the class. Or they're blending them to get them down to the correct level. But minimum contaminant level is for all kinds of contaminants. Nitrates, arsenic, chromium-6, anything you can think of. Then they also have minimum contaminant levels for coliform bacteria, which is the kind of the organic living stuff. All right, so yeah, this is just a summary again. Other Western water projects, so we're just gonna look at these for a second. There's a whole bunch of them. We are just looking at the ones, but Arizona has its own, Nevada has its own, and then each Colorado River dam has a project associated with it that feeds the local people. Okay, and that's it. I hope.